Inside at last.
Welcome, fellow Teffers, to Inside at Last, the one and only thief dedicated podcast. My name is Alex, and today I am joined by Jake and Seth again. Two people, two missions. What can go wrong? Hi, guys.
Hello, hello.
Good evening.
So, first thing I have to say, I was an idiot in the last episode, and not as always, but even more an idiot, because 1 hour after I released the episode, I was looking at the briefing video again, and I was like, "Oh wait, this isn't Cavador's beard. It's that strange mask he's wearing in the briefing video on that way, standing on that balcony." And I always thought it is a beard for some weird reason. Hi, Azamir, by the way. And yeah, and I was embarrassed, and then I wrote it on our channel and on Discord. But Random Taffer told me that it could be seen as a beard as well. So I was a bit, I was calm after that. But why didn't you guys correct me during the episode? I could slap you in the face.
I definitely retroactively imagined a beard as well. Like, as soon as you described him with a beard, image of Cavador with a beard was in my brain.
Yeah, so and I thought like, okay, so they weren't able to construct the beard on the 3D model, so they just gave him this mask. But then, after that, I was like, oh no! And people, people in the back, this idiot again. He doesn't know. Um,
It's a plausible story based on the appearance, and based on the fact that sometimes in games, especially early games, early 3D games, it's easier to stick a hat or a mask or something on somebody than it
yeah,
is
but
to model hair.
I made a whole chapter about it of like, oh, wooden mechanists like shave and stuff like that.
Interesting discussion though, and it's like, how would that fit into their beliefs?
Yeah, and it totally, it totally didn't have any reason to be. But yeah, the other thing is, I don't know. Mike never listens, brethren. He never does. But I'm wearing a beautiful shirt tonight just for him. Yeah, we had a funny interaction on the interwebs with the Editors Guild. Thanks for that. That was really fun. Mike was complaining about my shirt, so I sent him several videos. Or Seth, my spy on the Editors Guild did. And I was wearing one beautiful shirt after the other, and Mike, I think he almost collapsed. But the thing is, I thought about it. Like Mike is like 3 times the age of us, and I remember when so Brethren, no, the user Brethren, you all guys know them. And I remember when we met Stephen Russell, Mike always called him young man, and said to him like, "Hey, when you are in my age." So I think those modern shirts are just not for him. And yeah, I hope he will survive this. But yeah, it was really fun, and thanks to everybody, especially Skaki for his funny comment, and thanks for my little spy there, Seth. You did a great job.
I had a good laugh too.
Yeah. But to the topic, today we are talking about two missions. We didn't have so many comments, but we had very vast comments, I would say. So many opinions, which is great. Thanks to everybody who sent them in. One thing, you just reminded me, Adrian J. He wrote me an email with a article he wrote about. It's about atmosphere in 2 ways on character-based stealth games, and he uses the examples Hitman 3, one mission, and the mission Masks. And I didn't have the time this week, or not the brain for it, to translate it because it's written in a very academic German. Beautiful, actually. But yeah, but Seth, you did it now, and you got the gist of it. Is that correct or not?
That is correct. Yeah, I gave it a quick read through. I had some magical translation software at my fingertips, so I took advantage of that. And I think I have the gist of the case that Mr. Young is making here.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. But it's really long. But so the article, the link to the article, German article, is in the description. So if you guys want to read the whole thing, it's really interesting. And I think there are translation programs you can use to get the idea. But yeah, so casing the joint and masks. Where do we start actually? What is casing the joint about, guys? Can you tell me, please?
Sure. So we come to casing the joint from the last mission kidnapped. So we have Brother Cavador. We give him over. He's tortured for information or persuaded for information, if you want to put it that way. And he reveals that he is set to give some artifacts to the mechanists, the masks, and the cultivator. And it is after these masks and the cultivator that are being displayed in the mansion of Lord Gervasius. So Garrett has to get into the mansion and, well, I guess we'll start with casing, right? He's got to case the joint,
Yep.
so figure out what's going on and find the secrets of the mansion and map it out, get out. So
And the reason why Garrett's doing this is because Gervasius is holding an exhibition where these things are going to be on display, and he wants to get in and know how to get around this place before the exhibition is in place. He knows it's going to be a lot harder to deal with after the fact. So this is a preparatory run.
Yeah. And after jumping and diving through caves and shipping through the sea to a nearby place, to the lost city and stuff, how did you guys feel being back in a civilized world?
Well, now I'm bunny hopping through empty halls, aren't I? It's the
On
same.
carpet.
I really
Yeah.
like it. I really like it being back, and because of what you're kind of getting at, Alex, with like the juxtaposition between like we have had several missions that have been not traditional mansion castle burglary missions. We've had some unorthodox missions, some good ones, but some ones that aren't completely standard thieves. So it's I feel like it was good to come back and rob a mansion before the finale. So
Yep. But of course, there's a strange reason or strange decision they made, and that's the reason we do both missions in one episode, and that is, it's like 2 times the same building, just slightly different, or yeah, actually it's the same building, but with different positioning of guards, and yeah, of course, a different objective. But um, what do you guys think? I think the community is a bit divided over that. But I think the main thing is like people are not so happy to visit um, the same building twice in a row. What is your opinion on that?
I'm divided on it. I find if I'm offering an opinion on just visiting the same mission twice, I think it's an interesting choice in that I don't think it's out of character. We do visit the Hammerite Temple in Thief 1 twice, but we don't do it back to back, right? We visit the Hammerite Temple in Undercover, and then again many missions later not many, but a few missions later in Strange Bedfellows. So in a way, this is already par for the course for Thief, right? Like we knew that at some point we were gonna do this again. But this is the time that we actually have it like right next to each other. So you do your dry run and then you're theoretically back the very next night. And I feel like it does feel like you are playing a semi-finished mission on night 1 and then playing the finished product on night 2. And I almost wish that they had just used the same. It just doesn't feel like the same map, even though it is. I wish that they had used the same finished product twice and just given me different objectives, you know?
Yeah, and I think the difference to Thief 1 isn't the cathedral is totally destroyed in the second visit, if I remember it correctly.
Yes.
So it's totally different, and I think then you go underground and stuff. And yeah, I think it's a very different approach. And as you
yes.
said, that it's not like back to back. Um, I I think what I don't really get, or it feels a bit strange to me. Like Garrett has visited countless mansions and stuff, and this is not a very special one, I would say. It doesn't have like this huge thing where it's suddenly, like of course, like the sword or something. Of course, I didn't expect that, and I think this is a one-time mission you can only do once. But like, would Garrett really go there once to prepare a bit and to check out the place? He did that several times on very different and difficult locations, and he just visited once and got the job done. And now he's like, yeah,
I
like
mean,
you could have done something in Thief 1, like, oh, I visit the Lost City once and check everything out, and then I come back. No, I'm never coming back. But it feels a bit strange to me.
he
It's
doesn't
a
seem like the kind of guy who prepares. He's like he's always late on rent. Why would he prepare for a job in this manner? Sorry, Jake. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think the idea of like casing, like obviously real thieves and burglars like do like go someplace several times and learn the patrols and the layouts of stuff. So that's very on point for thievery. But yeah, it's not something that happens elsewhere in the series. And I like the mansion, especially in Masks. Like once it's fully filled out, I think it's a pretty good mansion. I don't think it's quite as doesn't have that same special quality, I think, of like Constantine's or Truitt's mansion, but I think it's a solid mansion. However, yeah, there's not much really different about it where you need to scope it out, case it out beforehand. So
Yeah.
There is an interesting similarity again between Strange Bedfellows and Masks, which is that a previously inaccessible area becomes accessible. So it does in some ways feel as though they were trying to follow up on that and repeat the format just in a really weird way.
I think you said at the beginning, like, it's like playing the unfinished mission and then the finished one. I actually thought that when I played Casing the Joint, I was like, oh, it's really bland. But then when you play the second mission, it's like, okay, it makes sense. They are planning this whole event. And at the first time Garen visits, it's like the rooms are still in preparation and maybe empty. Um, uh, Especially that one place, where you are up there in the middle. Isn't there actually one of the masks? I think. And upstairs is a wooden beam, where a guard walks up. And in the first one, in encasing the joint, it's like really just empty, and I was like, "What? What? This room has no purpose at all." Um, but I think they answer it in the second one, so I'm not too harsh about that. But still, I think it's like, wouldn't Garrett do this in just one go? Prepare. He has, yeah, okay, scanning out this place, but he doesn't need to do that. He has been in other places. Like the Angel Watchtower would maybe something to check out first.
Yeah,
And
no
then,
kidding.
yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
and this is pretty easy, in my opinion.
I think
But it's nice to be back in Civilization. Sorry.
No, it's quite all right. I think the exhibition hall is an interesting case in that, like, you wouldn't have to do much to tell me that this is an exhibition hall, but I think the tells are missing, right? Like, there's one person supposedly setting up the exhibition hall, and she's patrolling it, but she's not. There's no boxes being unpacked. There's no lists of artifacts posted anywhere. Like a simple readable with an inventory and a suggestion about where to place them would have probably sufficed to tell that story. But like, unless you have done museum prep, you're not going to look at those white walls and go, ah, yes, this is an exhibition hall and this is where these objects are going to go until the second mission when you get the payoff, right? So it's just kind of like there was no planting. It was supposed to be planting and payoff, but the planting kind of feels like it's missing on that.
Yeah. What I remember, once when I was with the old dudes with Next and Psychosis, we already mentioned casing the joint and masks. And I remember, if I remembered correctly, but it must have been me, I had the idea, and since I like it still so much, it must have been me, um, that maybe if you need those two runs, maybe why couldn't Garrett in the first one go in there and steal one of the masks, or maybe parts of one of those servants, you know? And in the second run, you go there as one of the servants, like yeah, like in Strange Bedfellows, you know, it's not a new theme to Thief, you know. So it worked once, and they tried different things in Thief 2 the second time. So why not this? You know, and then you can go there as a servant. You don't have to talk again, you know, and then this would be a very interesting approach that you really blend in with the folks, and maybe you have to do some task like someone is giving you orders, or you yeah, right, wouldn't that be great? Like you need to go to a certain place, but it is locked, it's inaccessible, so you need to find the right person, so the person sends you there to grab something, and while you're in his room or whatever, you actually, you know, pick up what you need or an important thing, you know. Yeah, well, what do you guys think about that idea?
I think it's cool. Like, I think the idea of like being undercover is cool, but at the same time, like I know how kind of wonky it was in the first game, and also like I'm not sure. So somebody in the community maybe answer this: what is fully possible with like scripting and things of that nature in terms of um different states, you know, to where you go up to a guard and they're like, "Here's the key, go get me the thing, like come back with the thing." You know what I mean? Like I know Thief, you know, with its age and with its engine, like there's certain things that are tough to do. I mean, but that if that could be pulled off, that would be great. Like go like hiding in plain sight, I think would have been great to do in this
And
game again, like undercover.
you're right, you're totally right, and they didn't have the time, they didn't have the money, they didn't even have the time to fully texture the pipes. I don't know if you stumbled upon
I
that
did
one
not
pipe
notice
that is
that.
transparent from that one side. Um, yeah, every time I play this mission, I remember it. I'm always looking for it. Oh, where's that pipe that is invisible from that one side? But when you come from the other side, you can see it. Um, I think it's on the gameplay video. I think I stopped there and watched it. Um, no, but of course, you're totally right, Jake. I think this would have meant way more workload to do than just maybe changing some things or copying the basics of the level and then just filling in things in masks. Um,
What
I
if
think.
oh,
Yep.
sorry, go ahead.
Go on.
I was gonna say, what if I know not to maybe get into this all the way, maybe save this for a different time, but I know originally the idea for like Thief 2 Gold was to have a mission in between casing and masks, and I almost wonder if that would have really benefited the mission to have at least one, if not two missions between these missions, and then you come back and you're like, oh, I remember this mansion from like a few hours ago in you know in playtime in terms of
Yep.
rather than like I'm doing these back to back. It's like, of course I remember, like I just did this, but I think it would have been a
Yeah.
lot more interesting to come back like a mission or two in between and then being like, oh, here's my map that I made a couple missions ago, and here's, you know, my notes I made or whatever.
Well, our friend Mr. Rymke pointed out it's been 2 weeks since casing the joint by the time Masks takes place, and that went right over my head. So of course, in that time frame, if Garrett is smart enough to case this place and do
Jake.
Uh, hello?
Yeah, Seth,
You're cutting out
you're
a little bit.
lagging. Yep. But Seth, are you there again?
Yep, I'm still here.
So can you please repeat the last part?
Yes, absolutely. So I said that it was pointed out there's 2 weeks between the two missions. So by the time Masks takes place, it's been 2 weeks since casing the joint. And one would think that since Garrett is smart enough to case the place and prepare for his actual raid, that in the interim he would do other things to prepare, like gather special equipment.
And again, he's gone.
No, I didn't understand. Just to pick up, I guess, where he left off. Yeah, it doesn't. I read that. Like, thank you for posting that in the chat and reminding us, because I forgot that there was 2 weeks between missions. Like Mirror, like I completely forgot about that, and because like the game doesn't really. I think yeah, having that mission, you could easily stick a mission in between there, and you know, have that feel like it's 2 weeks. But as a player, you watch the cutscene and it's like, oh, I'm back here again. So it's like, why even make it 2 weeks? Like like Ekmir, I think, referred to in his comment. Like, there's no sense of passing between the two missions. So
Yeah, it's strange. I think it's just they had to do it. I think they were out of, I don't know, levels and time and whatnot. I think this is, I would actually believe that this is not a written decision, that wasn't written in first place, and someone had it on his mind, and was like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I think that was a necessity, and I think they had a lot of stuff to do to finish this not also finished game. What I think one of the comments was, and I have to say it's really strange, but Reddit comments are just like one line and it's done. So most of them I couldn't use. It's like, yeah, it's a bad mission. Okay, thanks. Casing the joint should not be back to back with masks. It should have been earlier. Yeah, that was like, you just said that, Jake. But how much earlier, and how could that make sense? How could, in the context of other missions? Because I think many missions are like follow-up missions. Yeah, just like precious cargo and kidnap are you back-to-back missions, of course, and they make sense. So what would be the best way to make it, to find a way, put casing the joint maybe in the first half of the story? Have you
I'm
an idea?
Well, just thinking about it now. I mean, I know the idea for the hypothetical never realized thief to gold was to have, I think, new missions. But if you're taking it from this perspective, putting it earlier in the game, perhaps he's casing that joint for a completely separate reason. Maybe he knows that. Maybe he knows, or maybe he knows that there's going to be um the kind of the showing off of the masks, but he doesn't understand the connection yet to the mechanists. And then maybe after, so I'll give you an example. So say after like eavesdropping or something, like you put casing the joint, right? And then Garrett's like, oh, I hear about he at the cathedral or whatever, at the mechanist compound, he hears about, oh yeah, so and so is gonna have like a mask. It's gonna be good chance to get some money. And then later on in the game, after you do kidnapped, that's when you're like, Garrett's like, oh, this is connected to this other thing. You see what I'm saying? Like, he's just going there to rob it for money, like kind of like shipping and receiving. But then later in the game, he finds out that it's connected to his new mission, which is to stop Karis. I mean, that's
That
the only
would
thing I can think of off the
that
top of
would
my head.
actually be the most logical and the easiest way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So the rent is late, or the landlord wants more rent, and so Garrett has to pick it up. And yes, of course he needs, his apartment costs 3,000 a month, so of course he needs to pick up a lot of money. But yeah, I think that would be the easiest way, and actually I think would have made it better. Like a back to back, almost the same mission is like, nah, it always feels strange. And
Yeah.
I can't remember how I felt back in the days, but yeah, it was strange because the missions are not too different from each other,
Exactly. Yeah, you're not dealing, like you said, Alex, earlier, with Undercover and with Strange Bedfellows, where it's destroyed now, it's filled with monsters, like it's not social stealth anymore, it's traditional stealth. So the objectives completely change, and you're going underground after a certain point. So there's like an addition to the mission. Like, this is pretty much the same mansion with some more loot and some more furniture and some more guards and like different patrol routes, and that's about it. So I know, playing it somewhat more recently, I remember thinking like, I was like, oh, I like this mansion, but I was like, I just did this mission, and the only thing was like, it was nice as a player who doesn't ghost normally. I'm more of a, like, I like to, well, I ghost, but I'm not complete ghost. Like, I like to be unseen, but then blackjack. So
Yeah.
when I got to mass, I was like, oh, finally, I was like, I can use the blackjack. So it was kind of a relief, but I was like, man, this mansion is getting a little bit tiresome because I did them like back to back.
Did you guys also have that feeling that the guards on casing the joint are a bit more sensitive?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. They're on
Yes.
turbo.
100%. They definitely have more of a they seem more sensitive, and that's another problem if we want to get into problems where I had with casing especially, where it would be like, I wouldn't make anything that I thought was, like, alertable noise, and then I would fail the mission. It'd be like, "Oh, guard says you're not, you're making noise, guard figures you out," and I'm just, like, scratching my head going like, "What did I do?" Like, I didn't break a window, I didn't shoot an arrow, I didn't knock anybody out. It's just like some guard got alerted, and then that's it.
Yeah, and or sometimes I had it 2 times. I think that I was like going to another place pretty fast, and I have been there, and they were searching for me. Like they heard something, and I think Seth, you had a not so nice situation with that.
Yeah, my
What before that I want to say, and I don't think maybe it's just our impression. Maybe the guards aren't on more alert, but Azimir is in the chat. He will tell us. Um, but it's like almost the game is almost done, so you are used to the AI behavior by now, and you get a feeling for what can I do, what is possible to and to be identified and not, and suddenly it feels very very different, and I would say that even us now, like 20 years of experience of the game, or maybe I don't know how many you have, Jake, but um, it's like it still feels like that. Suddenly the guards are doing stuff where I'm like, how wait, they wouldn't act like this normally. So I think it's not a good decision if there was one. But Seth, yeah, like, tell us your story. I think many can relate.
Yeah, so I crossed the hallway between the tile floor and the carpet on the opposite side of a closed door, and I quick saved when I hit the carpet, and then suddenly the mission ended in a fail state, and I was like, what did I do? And then I reloaded the save game and opened the door and realized I had triggered a guard like halfway up the hall because the sound propagation didn't factor the door in, I guess. And I couldn't see or hear the guard from where I was, so I got destroyed by that. I had to restart the whole mission because I hadn't done any hard saves.
Was it maybe one of those doors where there's action where you can walk on the beams in between, like
It
like
might
you
have
said?
been. I actually didn't
And
go back to look afterwards.
because there they have been very very sensitive, of course, because there's an open thing in the wall, but yeah, it still felt a bit strange because one step on a tile normally doesn't alert the guards. They are just like, huh, is someone there, and then they go back into no alert state. uh but yeah, and it sucks, but I think this was another situation where we should finally use this great tool, the quick save tool, um that was done by one of the community members. Because I had, yeah, in the last mission I had the problem with Cavador. I couldn't pick him up anymore, and yeah, we should use that tool. I think it would be great and beneficial for us journalists.
Mm.
um, yeah. Um, so I
Oh, and
think, yeah. Sorry,
oh
go
no,
on.
sorry. I was gonna say, I think too another thing that I believe we're talking about in the chat, is it the mission, and Seth can speak to this too. The mask seems much brighter than casing. Casing seems like much darker.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you mean the
J-
lighting?
yeah. Jason mentioned that it's the phases of the moon have changed, and the devs actually took the time to reflect that in the brightness of the night sky. So when you start casing the joint, it's quite dark, and when you start masks, it's quite bright. And it kind of, if you've just like you exit onto the street at the end of casing and start on the outside of the mansion in masks, so it's really noticeable that you finish the mission in a dark environment and start the next one in a bright one. And it makes you immediately wonder, like if you're not following the story and you don't know it's that 2 weeks has passed, you're like, oh, is Garrett getting up early all of a sudden? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think it's a bit disguised by the weather in masks. Maybe, but I didn't recognize it actually. But yeah, you guys will tell the truth. Um, but that's interesting. They had time for this.
That's
Maybe
exactly what I was just thinking, Alex. Like they had time to change the moon, but they didn't have time to change the level. I'm just like,
they had time to change the moon. That's an awesome statement.
it is. It's very very surreal, very a surreal saying.
Yeah.
I wonder if the
depends on-
skybox is used in any other maps or if it's independent. Because if somebody actually went to the trouble to make a special skybox for this specific map, I would just be like, wow, that's a lot of time and resources for one small feature.
Yeah, actually, and there are so many unused dialogues in the original release, and yeah. But hey, it's fine. We can deal with it, and I think it's time to read out. One of the longer comments. Of course, we got the usual guys like Plutonia, Eminol, the Bull, Esmir, and some others. Who wants to start with the Plutonia comment? Okay, Seth, here you go.
Yep, I was about to volunteer. So Plutonia says, a brief opinion? I don't have brief opinions. I think casing the joint gets a lot of undeserved hate. It's surprisingly good for the pacing of the game, because it's like a little break. It's a mission with very few guards and a boatload of tiny loot items hidden all over the place. The atmosphere is very warm and comfortable. Also, objectives that can be completed in one mission or the next are a completely unique mechanic to this one. So I want to stop there for a second.
Yeah.
What objective is that? Is that the correspondence objective?
I was thinking of that too.
I believe that it is the correspondence objective because I actually solved that in the first mission and it started checked off already in the second mission. So I think that is
Yeah,
what
then it
Plutonia
must
is
be
talking
this.
about.
I didn't pay
Um,
attention actually to this. Yeah, I
ah.
had a rough week, as I said, but yeah, it's yeah. This one is a cool thing then, and that's something actually we would have loved with many things in other missions, like gear that you can take from one mission to another and stuff like that. That should have happened way more often, and yeah. But maybe I
Well,
think it's a different story to do that and to do that.
just imagine the replayability if you could find a key in an earlier mission that carried through to a door in a later mission, right? Like that would already add some interesting replay value. So yeah, persistent objectives, very interesting. So continuing Plutonia's comment. A big problem with casing is the fact that the third floor is meant to be inaccessible for no tactical reason, and thus the level designers even left it unfinished. Why shouldn't Garrett case that area as well? The second problem is that it's a mission with a mandatory stealth but a quiet exit, and no evidence left behind is not possible at all since you have to break a window to escape, which makes no sense because the reason that you can't get caught is that nobody should know you've been there in the first place. It's a pretty good point.
And I think on the chat, I think it was Esamir who said that it's a bit strange. The guards should be on higher alert in masks, not on casing the joint.
Correct.
Which makes sense. But
yeah, of course, there's loot missing at the very least. Do you have to break a window? That's what I saw this comment before we started recording. And isn't there one? I could be mistaken. Somebody can correct me. But isn't there the one door that you can go out of, or do you have to break a window?
you can go through the door.
You can go through the door, but there's a guard standing directly in front of it who never moves, so you have to be pretty quick about it, I believe.
Yeah, I think huh, sound arrow, you know what I mean, could work here.
Noisemaker. Yep.
Yeah, noisemaker.
Noisemaker.
Right.
Get him away from there, and then go out the door.
Yep, I think that.
Which still leaves, still reinforces his comment of like, there's arrows and like jewels and stuff missing. It's like, well, yeah, they should be a lot more suspicion in masks for sure.
Well, that's one of the funny things about it, though, is that when you play casing, the place isn't properly set up. There's furniture missing. There's loot for Garrett to steal, and then when you go back the second night, there's more furniture and fresh loot. So it's like, is Gervasius just putting more furniture out to look richer for his guests, or does he just not live in his own house? What's going on?
I think that's an interesting thing, and maybe I thought about this as well. Oh, here you can see a window where you can get out on the stream right now, which I found very strange, but just a side comment. Yeah, I had the same feeling, and I could, if I would think of the humor of the Looking Glass Studios, I think that would totally fit to the whole view on the rich and everything. It's just for show, Does he read them all, or are they just for show? Yeah, it's. I think that this is like a subtle comment.
That's what I like about this game. Like, I mean, I guess to speak more broadly, but this mission illustrates it, so I guess it ties in. But like, there's so much great like little comments that don't become like full blown. Like a lesser developer would have like Garrett go on a tirade about all the people he hates and stuff like that. But all you need is like this little like sarcastic like quip, and I think it does more for the game's like world and the game's like story than like a monologue or something like that, or an exchange that would take place would do for it. So
Um, Name Free Folsom is just like asking, like, also, why are the hidden pathways lit? Makes no sense. Imagine the energy bill. I believe someone who has a house where you have to walk miles from one room to another doesn't care. And back in the days, everything was cheap with energy. So, I think they didn't have to worry about that, would be my impression. Because sometimes I wonder, like, the electricity bills must be so high because most houses don't even have light switches.
Well, something really interesting about the passages specifically is in Gervasius' own bedroom. There's a pass-through passageway to who I assume it's his wife's bedroom or maybe the guest bedroom. I'm not sure. I don't actually know if Gervasius has a wife or not. But there's a pass-through to a second bedroom, and I think there's some implications there as to what the passages are used for. Um, and if he has one from bedroom to bedroom, it kind of follows that he would have one from one room to another in the house as well. He just kind of seems like that sort of dude, and maybe he's just not fleshed out as well as he needs to be. But something I found very interesting about the like related to the energy bill is that most of the passageways have all of these they have these pipes, and you could hear a sound throughout the mission. Like I really liked the ambience. It sounds like a breathing air conditioner, and I'm like, okay, is this an air conditioned rich man's house? Is this like a temperature controlled environment because it is also a museum? I just found that to be a really fascinating setup. Like it's I think for me it's storytelling without a readable.
Um, isn't that on Life of the Party where the four guards are discussing over the rooftops, and Daniel Tron's character says, and you will something like you will find yourself in one of the unnecessary ventilation systems. Um, that I'm just thinking of that. I don't know. I think they are just there for atmosphere. But yeah, that's the show. Our show is about overthinking those stuff. So I don't know, but I think I like the sound as well. I think that it's used very often in fan missions as well, and it's something I really got used to, and I really like the sounds. Yes.
Well,
Um,
and I'm sure at this point Amenel has made a 1 hour loop of it that we can just listen to when we're working. So
yeah, right. Um, yeah. By the way, great channel. From Eminel. Going on. With Plutonia's comment.
of course. Masks is just a great heist mission. Lots of all sorts of security to avoid. Encasing the place actually avoids a big problem of many stealth games, which is the players run around the level getting chased by guards so they can learn the level, so they could restart it and do it more stealthily next time. It's basically cheating, but Thief avoids it by putting casing before masks. The ghost puzzle sucks though. The player is supposed to figure out that the voices come from the books, even though they're the same voices in Return to the Cathedral. So players would assume it's just generic ambience instead of gameplay relevance. Okay.
With the second, I would disagree a bit. Because they are very specific at that one place. You can hear that it's in directional. So I would say it works pretty well, in my opinion. But
I have a
yeah.
slightly different opinion. So
Oh,
I solved I actually am not entirely sure what the resolution to the puzzle is, but I got into the secret room where the bodies are kept. So I assume that's a resolution. Um, so my problem with that area is that the books all make ghost sounds, and the ghost sounds are from the same stock. It's not stock, but the same source as the apparitions' mutterings and mumblings, right? And on
I'm
night
just finding it on the stream. That's very cool that we are just talking about that.
What the heck? So on night one, on casing the joint, there is an apparition of one of the dead bodies that is hostile to Garrett, walking around the upper story of the library, and that apparition is playing the idle apparition noises, so you can hear all the different layers of whispers and stuff. And when you couple that with the readables that emit ghost sounds, like we know this is a ghost sound, right? It's intentionally used because at this point we have been taught this is what ghosts sound like in Thief. Then you have a real ghost. It's just a wall of sound that you can't. It's so muddy you can't tell what is what, and it just kind of feels disorienting. Like the ghost is all around you all the time, and if you're not careful, suddenly there is an actual hostile ghost killing you, and like that sucks.
Yeah, the
On
ghost was annoying, especially since you cannot kill him.
Well, if you're trying to get help from someone, why are they hostile, right? Like one of the ghosts is asking for help and the other is angry. So like I don't know. I felt like I solved that on night one and then I went back and solved it again on night two. I did the same puzzle twice. And on night two, there is no apparition stalking the library, and it was way easier for me to figure out where the books were and remember them and not have the interference of a wandering wall of sound around upstairs. So I think in some ways it's a good design decision, and in some ways it's a very difficult decision to parse.
What I found strange is that the library is just open. I would imagine that maybe, Gervasius is a bit aware of that something's going on there, and maybe then he would shut it down.
Put a board over the door. Like there's some doors in the game that have like boards over them, so you had to like
to not raise suspicion.
yeah.
Yeah, but then if you wanted to open it, then you would have alerted the whole house.
True, that wouldn't
because
work
they
in
are
casing.
super sensitive.
That's true. That's true. In casing, that would be maybe fine. But yeah,
since he
for
has so many
casing-
secret passages, couldn't there be a secret passage to the library? So you can do it in Garrett style and find the secret passage. But yeah,
I'm just
so
imagining based on the
so-
conversation earlier. Sorry, I was gonna say based on the conversation earlier that like Gervasius has just like a huge electric bill and just gets his electric bill and is like, why are we paying for all these lights that are like hidden in the wall? Like, but
so I wasn't sure if I saved it, but just finding the dead couple is like the solution to it. I thought there was more to it.
Well, so on night two, there's a plot where the guy he's the librarian and he's in love with one of the servants and they want to run away together. And there is another he wants to get his position filled so that he can leave and vacate like he wants to leave his indentured servitude and go somewhere else with this woman that he loves, but he needs to replace himself. And there's a competing librarian that he's trying to get hired to replace him. And in the second mission, you can find a readable that is basically the other librarian accepting the post. And I think the implication is that the other librarian was jealous either of the post or of the romantic relationship and needed to get him out of the way. And so when I played, I picked up that readable and dropped it into the area with the bodies just to make him look extra guilty. I know it didn't satisfy any objective, but that's what I did.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I seem to recall that there is some kind of objective on a higher difficulty related to that, but it's been a long time since I've played it on anything above normal. And in this occasion, I did the playthrough on normal, so I can't verify or deny that.
What would have been cool if you if you would actually help them in encasing the joint, if you choose to do that, and then maybe in the second run, then maybe the two bodies suddenly lay next to each other holding hands or something like that. That would have been something cool, I would say. Bit creepy also, but yeah, so Garrett's like, I even helped them in heaven or whatever they believe in. He's a non-believer, Garrett. So in Thief's Heaven, just imagine a Thief's Heaven, where just thieves are living, and
Oh, we
they
have
steal the shit out of each other every night.
Classic. No
It's
honor
like
among thieves.
it's like in my hometown. It's a university city, and It's the city in Germany with the highest rate of bike theft. Um, in percentage to this the amount of citizens, and it's like really normal, like that people go out of the club or something, and then they just grab a bike randomly, and it's like, oh, I had this one last year already, or something like that. Then they just put it in, next to their apartment building, and maybe in the same night or next day, someone else is like, oh, I grabbed this bike, and then they go back to the city, whatever it's. Um,
And he just needs to invest in public bikes at this point.
Yeah, I think the Netherlands. I just saw a video some days ago that they had a thing like people were stealing bikes, and then they made the people pay for to get it back, and it's now really normal. It's like just like a normal job, it's like steal the
Bike
bike and
heists.
get paid. It's really interesting, but I'm distracting the whole
Life
thing here.
imitates art. We did
Yeah.
get a comment on the video, so Jason clarifies that Ashton is Lorna's husband, and she cheated on Ashton with Giles. Ashton killed both of them and left.
Ah,
that's
so
the
they
story.
went not guilty. Okay. So he actually had a reason to kill him.
Jealousy.
But then I don't see. Wait, if I get that right, then I don't see why they did something wrong in first place. So it's like, yeah, of course, killing someone is not a solution, but he wasn't acting out of just of greed or something like that, which would normally be the case. But
Yeah,
now it's like, okay,
definitely gives it a little more depth.
yeah. If I were Garrett, I totally believe in heaven. Since saving Brother Murrus, we never see the builder, but his rights to work. Um, yeah. So I think we can go on with the next comment by Eminel. It's a short one. My brief opinion, the missions are quite satisfactory, but they would be more exciting if an unexpected event occurred after Garrett steals the masks. He would need to swiftly devise a new escape plan utilizing alternate routes such as ventilation shafts or sewers. Within these concealed pathways, he encounters a variety of new mechanist security devices that he hasn't dealt with before. These advanced devices present a formidable obstacle, pushing Garrett to rely on his agility and cleverness to evade detection and secure his escape. I would totally agree, because especially since it's close to the end, I think this would make sense. But I think there have been ideas. Do you remember, guys, this unfinished mission that wasn't put into the final game with that burning city? Where this
The dock, I think, is like the docks, something like that. Or the
yeah,
I don't
and
remember
factory
it at all.
district.
they had like different mechanists, children or whatever. So I think that would have been a really cool thing if suddenly like uh something like that happened. But on the other hand, we discussed this already. This would also mean a lot of more work to put into programming and stuff.
Yep. Are you thinking of the mission, the raid on Willard Slum or Square? Willard Square. It's in the slums.
I don't know. I know. I remember a video of, and I think they wanted to rebuild it. There was this project where they wanted to do like a Thief 2 Gold, the fans,
Yep.
and it's this. Everything is burning, and I think it would have added to the story and variety of the missions a lot.
Oh,
But yeah,
absolutely.
something like that. Otherwise, I thought when I read this comment, feels like Thief 2014. Like you do the job and then the games decides to, no, fuck it up. Anyways, it's our plan and now you have to run.
Yeah, it's not always fun, I think, as a player to play a game and then like it's nice to have twists and surprises, but it's sometimes nice to see a plan through, just like in real life. Like when you plan it out, you do it, it comes through, it works. It's not always fun to be like to kind of bait and switch the player all the time. And obviously, like we could say it until we're blue in the face, but obviously they didn't have the time, budget, etc., blah blah blah, for anything additional in the game. But hypothetically, if they did have time to like put more stuff in the game, it's like, would you always want that in a mission where it's like you finish the mission and then the game's like, well, actually, you have to do this now to finish.
Yeah.
So unsatisfying, I think, as a player sometimes.
And I want to quote a famous YouTuber and podcaster. They changed the moon. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, but I think, but in this case, I think I have like two hearts in my chest for this. At one hand, it's like, yeah, it's cool, especially you make this planning mission and then you execute it in masks, um, and then it doesn't work. It's like, okay, thanks for nothing. On the other hand, it's like, yeah, two times basically the same building. Um, then it would add some variety, you know. I think players would prefer that more. But yeah, I think it was too hard to do that in a short time.
Yeah, this would have required a lot of work, but I think that an interesting way to have done this would have been to there's all those stationary turrets. And I think that an interesting way to pay off casing the joint would be if there was a hidden readable encasing that reveals that the turrets are actually mobile and will become mobile robots once a pressure plate is tripped. And then you don't necessarily have to find it, but if you do find it, it gives you an advantage of being ready for it in the next mission, where when you pick up a mask, it trips a pressure plate and suddenly you have twice as many robots to avoid, right? Like, that's not even an unfair twist. It's just like, okay, you have more obstacles to avoid. Show us what you got.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, and maybe in encasing the joint, I was already like, wait, this texture is way too blurry. You can just see it on the video. I was a bit, because I didn't remember what will happen in masks. So I was like, wait, this carpet looks really really strange, and I was already a bit suspicious at that point. Um, yeah, it's ugly. Um,
I just find it amusing that Gervaisius is willing to kill all the guests that are also presumably coming to see his artifact.
yeah. Um, uh, but isn't it like, since it's not in full, the thing is not running the event, isn't it? I think he will turn it off. But there's no way to turn those traps off, right?
There is what do those levers do in the atrium?
Correct.
There's
Yeah.
a series of levers with colored lights. I think you can only have one carpet turned off at once, though.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
You
what
can't.
it was for. That would have been
Yep.
one of my questions. Was like, wait, what? Okay, what a stupid idea. They had time for that. Changing the moon and building in this thing for that. And it was
Exactly.
because I read at that point I read a walkthrough, because I didn't know what these things are for, the lights, the switches, and the walkthrough said, yeah, now depending on the lights, it's like now the colored doors throughout the mansion are open. And I was like running through the place like, what colored doors?
Yeah.
So uh,
Yeah.
That walkthrough was
is,
incorrect.
is my game bugged? Like, where are the colored doors?
no, really, but why do you write something like that down?
That's completely wrong. Yeah, it's not even close to what happens.
No, there are no colored doors. That's Yeah, but this whole aperture is strange, and I don't know. It's like, just imagine, he's having these easy access to all the camera switches and whatnot. They are not really hidden or something, so yeah, they are easy accessible. But then you make an apparition like that for your stupid little carpet switches. I don't know. I don't know if they had the right balance in what is important right now. Um, but hey, who knows? What do you guys think of this mechanic?
Kind of a little bit annoying because you can only turn off one at a time. Then you have to keep going back, turn off one, turn off the other. I know you can also. Well, the first time I did the mission, I didn't understand. Like you were saying, Alex, I didn't understand how the switches worked. So I was like, "What is this? I don't get this." So all I ended up doing was I shot a rope arrow into it, and I kind of like almost like a Mission Impossible movie. Like I roped down from above,
Yeah,
grabbed them, like reached down and grabbed them, then roped back up, which is kind of cool in and of itself. But then I found out, oh, I can turn off the gas, but it's like you have to keep turning it off, go to the room to get the masks, run back, So there's a lot of like backtracking on the floor if you want to do it that way.
I had
Yeah,
so many health potions that I just walked into the room, bold-faced, snatched everything off of all the things, gasped Garrett, and drank down my health potion.
I did a different approach. And we can see that in the video later of masks. I always jumped on the platforms where the masks are on. There are those two not important, just loot masks. I grabbed them from one of them by going close to them, then leaning over forward and then grabbing that one. Then I went to the middle, jumped onto the middle platform with that important mask, and then from there I jumped onto the other loot mask platform. That's how I did it 3 times, and it was pretty annoying. Um, so yeah, and I felt the exhibition is not so close to this switch thing. It's like running back and forth, and even if I would have known, I think I wouldn't have used it.
It's a little bit of a walk to get, like you said, to get from back to the main room or the atrium where the switches are to the exhibition rooms. It's like a little bit of a hike, so it's definitely it makes it just extends it, I think, a little bit. If you do it that way, it extends it a little bit longer to the point of like tedium, and Ekmir kind of said that in the chat, is like testing your patience for tedium ahead of Soulforge. It's like it's not quite obviously Soulforge level, but it's kind of, it's like, yeah, the backtracking definitely is a
Yeah, and
reminiscence.
everything looks the same. The whole building doesn't have a lot of variety in its looks. That they tried, like close to his sleeping room, bedroom, um, and stuff where those switches actually are. Then I think they tried to make this part a bit more interesting with this plant room. But one question I have: the elevator, is it accessible? There's you can call an elevator behind a door that I couldn't get to open.
So the elevator, I smashed the door open. I actually couldn't find a button for the elevator. I
I
wonder
couldn't
if
smash it
someone
open.
knows. Oh, really? Weird. I smashed it with my sword.
I just smashed it. But I don't remember if I did it in casing or if I did it in masks. Maybe that's different as a mirror. Um, because I couldn't smash it open. I love smashing it. I mean, the intro of our podcast is smashing a door in, so I like that. But I couldn't do it.
I smashed it in casing, and in casing you can't ride it upwards, right? It just looks like a monster closet. In in
Really?
masks, yeah, in masks, I smashed it, and then I was like, the door opened, and I walked through it as it opened and fell down the elevator shaft. And I'm like, oh, this is how Garrett dies.
Yeah. Uh, okay, but yeah, I couldn't get it to open. It's strange. But what can you ride the lift? Can you use it?
I couldn't find a button for it. Maybe someone knows where the button is.
I mean, you can call it down, but not up. So it's there's okay. Strange decision that they just not maybe. Why didn't they just delete it?
Well,
You
they
know,
probably need to justify getting the robots up to the third floor, and they were like, "Oh, how would you do it without an elevator?" So it might be
of
there for
course,
story reasons.
with the smallest door they could find for that.
Yes, exactly. Well, maybe they take it apart and reassemble it on the top floor, right?
Yeah, and so they have to drag it through the whole thing there. Yeah,
It's just like a
those
real job.
that's something I really, really thought about very often, especially in this mission again. Like the poor mechanists, that have to really work, and not just walk around in caves and
Hmm.
and hide in cathedrals. Um, they have to drag all those heavy, or maybe they have. Oh, maybe the servants, of course.
There you
They
go.
would use their own servants, I think. Yeah. So, easy. Oh, no, don't worry. I'm not worried about the mechanists anymore. Solved that. Um, yeah, no, but yeah, the elevator was a mystery to me. The bull said on YouTube, not exactly a controversial opinion, but I don't think I've ever played anyone outside of Ubisoft collectibles that felt more like filler content. Bold statement.
I
I think
I
the comparison lags a bit, but what is your opinion?
I actually wonder, just from like a game dev point of view, I wonder if they had a mission they were planning to put before masks and then they had to cut it because it wasn't finished. And if they were like, oh no, we have contractual obligations to have this many maps. We
Yeah.
need to fill this. That's my theory.
I think they finished with. I think there's as many maps in Thief 2 as there is in Thief Gold, if I'm doing my math right.
Yep.
Yep, that is
So,
correct.
so it's kind of like, well, you don't want to have less, and they put out Thief Gold just not even a year before, right? So it's like, well, we don't want to release the next Thief game and have it have less missions than the last one, because then it's like, that just optically like doesn't seem good to a consumer who just
I don't think
is purchasing the game.
I don't think that. So my only thought about that is I don't think one mission would have made the difference. If
No.
if it was a selling point, if putting I think it's 13, if putting 13 missions on the box was a selling point that like their publisher wanted, and there was publisher pressure to exceed that number, then I totally get it. But honestly, I think it might have been more fun just to put masks in and skip casing and just call it done. You know?
No, of
But
course, like
it's
from a tight design standpoint, but I mean, I think from like a consumer and like a advertising standpoint, like when you're showing the game off to like journalists and magazines at the time, which don't exist really anymore, unfortunately. But at the time, gaming magazines are super important. It's like, oh yeah, like this is like a follow up, to the Thief we just did the year before, or Thief Gold that we just did. It's like, well, how many missions does this one have? It's like, oh, it has a couple less. It's like it just sounds obviously there's with good reason, but it's one of
But
those
they would
things.
have said, but of course we put more time into quality assurance of, blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah, I agree. But you know how people are where they're like, the map is this, games nowadays where like the map is 5 times as big as the previous map. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of the push is always for more and more content, not necessarily for better content, although I completely agree with you.
Yeah, you might be right, especially when Thief Gold or Thief 1 wasn't the bestseller. It should have been. So maybe they had to go on everything like that. Yeah, I would agree. But yeah, it's strange. Oh, there is now it's masks running on the stream. Yeah, but filler content. I think the comparison with the Ubisoft collectibles is like a strange comparison. I can see what he means, but I think the filler content there is planned for reasons, to stretch the game and not for reasons of existential problems, I would say. And yeah, I think
Correct.
it was.
Yeah, the reason is they ran out of time. Ubisoft doesn't run out of time. They run out of
Oh, they
creativity.
at the moment they are running out of time.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but before, yeah,
Oh
they're in
God.
trouble now financially, but before when they weren't.
Have you seen their live show? That was such an embarrassing thing in comparison to the Microsoft and EA and showcases.
Oh yeah, they're in trouble.
It was like a town hall meeting, and it was really embarrassing.
Oh,
I didn't see it
I
at
think
all.
yeah, that they didn't get the memo that nowadays, Microsoft's conference was really tight, game after game after game,
yep.
because they know people watch it in real life and they skip to the specific parts. They don't want anybody to talk minutes in between. And Ubisoft still does it like 10 years ago. Like there's still an E3 around, like a showcase live in the theater, but or in a town hall as they did it. Um, it's yeah, it was really strange. But yeah, back
Hopefully not
to
IDOS 2.0.
yeah. Then we got a comment by who's that? Eckmeyer, um, Esemir. Esemir, you one day have to tell us how to pronounce your name.
I
Jason
think
T. Reimke.
Ekmir.
No, I don't. I would say Esemir. Esemir is a common name.
I think he answered us on the last stream, but I can't remember what he said. I think it was Ekmir, but he can correct us again.
I like
Eckmeir.
Esemir
Ekmir.
because
Oh,
it
he
sounds.
said. Really? Why don't you correct me? I told since how many streams I say Azimir. Um, um, okay, Azimir made a comment. Maybe one of you guys want to read it out.
Sure. Casing the joint is another example of an idea that is related to heist not translating well to what is fun, realism getting in the way. Sneaking isn't that hard part most of the hard part most of the mission. I don't know why the third floor never got a clean up pass in development. There are thoughtful things like the floors in the exhibition rooms having a pit with the same carpeting as masks, as if to subconsciously get the player comfortable with the general appearance, while hinting at the false floor pressure plates of the masks. I wish solving the library mystery encasing persisted into masks, and that Philemon Abernathy, named for a character in Dorian Hart's Heroes of Spyro saga, could discover the bodies. Lorna's last level in the library changes length depending on difficulty. That's actually cool. Alliteration. The only time this happens in the trilogy, I should say, I'll do it. Lorna's last love letter in the library changes length. Alliteration. The only one other time this happens in the trilogy, the readable, not the alliteration, is down in the Bone Horde, where one readable has more information as the difficulty increases. That's interesting.
I want a list of all the alliterations in the entire series from you, Jason.
He could do it. If anybody could, he could.
What I wondered was like down in the Boneheart. So actually, if you raise the difficulty, you get more hints. Did I get that right?
I think that's correct.
The
Okay,
letter,
that's
the
strange
letter is
decision.
longer. Yeah, the letter's longer. So I don't.
Because I
Trying to
would
think of
imagine
which one.
on expert they would give you less hints, you know, or maybe it's like
I think
like
it's because you have additional objectives, so they have to give you hints for those additional objectives.
okay, down in the Boneheart is stupid, anyways.
Hey,
That's my scientific argument here. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. But hey, I think after Thief 2, we make Thief Deadly Shadows. Um, um, yeah, that was it's interesting. I didn't know that, and of course, I think you have to replay it in a short time to actually remember what was written and try it on different difficulty levels. So, but yeah, that's thanks for the insight, Ekmir. Um, we should all be like Alex's and Seth's and Jake's. That's easier.
Well,
Uh,
I was say, speaking of Adrian J says, I would really love to see that Necromancer mission. I think he's referring to the Emil Pagliarilla mission that was supposed to be between casing and masks. It was Wake the Dead, I think, was that mission.
I'm very happy that we didn't have that. It's actually pretty amazing that those are two missions, in a row. Isn't that great?
Well, I guess yeah. If the alternative is I know you're not a fan of those type of missions all the time. So if that alternative is those two things, I can see why you'd choose that.
well,
No,
Thief 1 shows that the city has a really awful problem with like pest zombies. And then in
Yeah.
Thief 2, you're kind of like, oh, what happened to this infestation we were dealing with? Is it just dealt with now?
Actually, with the mechanist beasts, the metal beasts, I think this problem could be solved.
Yeah, potentially, but it does kind of seem like the Hammerites are both the solution and the problem in that they're like, yes, we're blessed, we can get rid of the undead, but somehow specifically their dead keeps rising.
Yeah, that's totally right. Yeah. No, but I think that would have been a cool thing, like if the mechanists would would free those lost places, and then they could retake the old Hammerite cathedrals and make it their own and see it as a sign that, like, look, the Hammerites weren't able to save this place, but we were here to rescue it, so it's ours now. Look at us. Just saying, lost opportunity, Karis. Just saying. Yeah, we had another comment by Angder, I would say. It was on TTLG. And they say casing and masks are horrifically unfinished and definitely poorly designed in places. However, they are far from exceptional in their issues. The biggest issue is that they are back to back. Honestly, if casing was remade set just after Ambush, with Garrett trying to return to that job after being bothered by the Watch and discovering mid-mission that the collection was not there, or maybe have Garrett's target be something that isn't the masks at all. For example, leading masks having escalated security, allowing for a harder mission in the same environment. That would have allowed the follow-up both to be significantly different in gameplay-wise and still had some space to breathe. Admittedly, the coincidence that Garrett just happened to rob him already might have been a bit hard to swallow. As it stands, though, that we are left with this one slightly subpar mission, which you must play twice in a row, with no real variation between the versions. The library is a nice bit of variety in the mission, and the general design does seem to like long corridors, but I don't really mind this. That said, the scale of the mansion does feel a bit silly when thought about it for too long. Had casing mask been an FM, I would have given it a solid 3 out of 10. Added side note, the gas traps in the mask rooms are hilariously broken, and I honestly love them. Um,
3
yeah.
out of 10. 3 out of 10 is like a death sentence for an FM. Like, I don't think I've ever rated an FM 3 out of 10.
Um. We did back in our contest missions. Um. uh, but I don't think that this would have been a 3 out of 10 FM. I would say. I would say for an FM, people would say, "Oh, that's pretty cool," you know.
Some fun ideas and free content.
Yeah, and this transparent pipe was amazing. Yeah, no, that transparent pipe wouldn't have been there because the beta testers would have would have been one of the first things Jay Root or anybody would have like, hey, wait, there's this.
I think to his point, his comment, yeah, it would have been a big coincidence to be like, I'm gonna go rob this mansion for the jewelry, and then he has to come back there for the mechanist. But stories are always filled with coincidences, like the right place at the right time. So it's one of those things that you have to suspend your disbelief when you interact with a work of fiction to realize that there's going to be a lot of consequences, like, or a lot of coincidences. I mean, for the story to happen. So I think you could just have that where that was my idea earlier, which I actually forgot about when I reread your comment. I was like, oh, we have the same idea. But yeah, I just have it so Garrett's after something else, and it's just like, oh yeah, this is where the exhibition's going to be. So
Yeah, I think he says a lot of things we already mentioned, or she.
yep, 100%.
But I think I love this. I think that FM rating is a bit unique, I would say, and I think would have been a bit harsh. I remember when back in the days with Next and Psychosis, we did those contest missions episodes that we were always like, could you really? There was maybe a really bad mission, and I was like, yeah, I gave it a 2 out of 10, and the others were like, what? You cannot do that. It's really harsh and hard. And then I sometimes, okay, I go up 2 or 3, 1 or 2 numbers. So I think that Anger wouldn't be very, very famous among the community if he rates that hard, because people are very sensitive. Just yesterday, I was watching a German streamer, Garrett TMT, and I don't know, someone was asking where Psychosis, why he isn't on the podcast anymore, because I was active in the chat. And then Garrett told us when he read Psychosis, he was like, oh yeah, we were discussing his missions a bit on the chat, and then he was like, yeah, he didn't rate one of it was Psychosis mission where there's the transition between the Hammerites and the Mechanists taking over. A pretty good mission. I think it was Thief 2 anniversary contest. And yeah, Gary TMT didn't like it so much, or he didn't like the gameplay. And Psychosis was not so happy, so they had a long discussion about it and why. And it was interesting. I didn't thought that Psychosis would be like that. I always thought he doesn't give a taff.
Now we know.
Everybody
Yeah.
has different preferences for everything, including missions.
Yeah, but 3 out of 10 is pretty harsh.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
I think ambush maybe, or chasing the courier is like maybe in that area. I would say 4 out of 10. But this one, um, it's a 5 and 6, I would say.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I don't want to skip ahead, but there's a comment. Snake's comment gets into it, but I kind of agree. Like, I think Masks is pretty good, but I think because you have to do casing and both of them back to back, I think that decreases the quality of Masks. Even though I think like if you were to set Masks again, some like we've been talking about somewhere else, or having these missions split up.
Why don't you read out Snake's comment?
Sure, absolutely. Snake says, I was going to largely ignore casing because of, as part of this opinion, as a real experience in Masks, which, like Blackmail before it, are both quintessential mansion heists, which influence many mansion fan missions afterwards. I like the ambient music, which is tense and atmospheric, but very cozy at times. There are many nice touches in the mission with hidden passages, and the library goes subplot, which perhaps could have been padded out a bit further. A couple of issues unfortunately detract from Masks' overall reputation among the community, one being the aforementioned casing mission, which is in principle is an intriguing idea but poorly executed. It ends up just leaving the player frustrated with having to essentially play the same mission twice in a row. The other issue is that the rushed nature of the design of the mission, with some minor bugs visible in the final product and empty or unfinished areas. Overall, however, I think Mass is probably one of the stronger missions in Thief 2 and should be ranked in the top half of missions, but tends to rank near the bottom on many lists due to the casing mission preceding it, which is unfortunate.
Very interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how the opinions, like one of the higher rated missions. I would say it's an both of them. Yeah, Masks is, I agree, a bit better. And maybe yeah, as we just said, like if casing wouldn't be, Mask would maybe the perception would be better in general by the people. But I would say it's an average. Both are pretty average. One is lower average and the other is higher average.
Yeah, I would say I pretty much I agree with his opinion. I think like I probably would put Masks in like, if I divided the missions up and had like a median, like, and kind of what you said, Alex, like I would put the Masks up top, and I would probably put casing down below, personally.
Well, I think casing, it's like Snake said, in slightly different words. Casing just kind of washes out the value of Masks. Like you have almost too long with this level. It overstays its welcome.
Yeah.
And like
Too much of a good thing.
Well, it's not even that it has to be too much of a good thing. It's just a good thing turned into an okay thing by exposure, you know?
Yeah, and I also think too, and I think another commenter mentioned this earlier, was I think being able to, I think it was Platonia. Yeah, Platonia mentioned in their comment, like I think if you could get up to the third floor in casing, then it would make more sense. Although, I mean, one of the things I guess in Masks, like we were talking about earlier, how undercover versus Strange Bedfellows, how Strange Bedfellows has differences, like you can go underground, things are destroyed. I guess the only thing equivalent to that, or one of the only things, is that like in casing, I think you can get up to the third floor, but there's nothing there. So why would you? But in Masks, you can get to the third floor.
I just thought, while grabbing me a drink, I thought, like, because we discussed that earlier, that it's maybe a filler mission and they maybe wanted to have those 15 missions. I think it would have been way better if they needed a reused mission. And now we come back to Life of the Party. We discussed there that the question, if it would have been even better if, like, the city would have been one level, so the city level would have been even bigger, and then Angel Watch would have been its own mission, and then using the city, which is way more interesting, as an extra mission again, but now you have to go back and now things changed and stuff like that.
I agree with that. I think that's an excellent point, is if they already had a giant city asset that they didn't reuse, they could have just cut the brushes from Angel Watch and closed that area off.
Yeah, but of course, then they needed to build Angel Watch specifically, and we know that they, already had like levels, and then they put everything together in the story and to the setting. but still, I think if just if those problems wouldn't have been there, I think this would have been the better reuse uh, of a city mission. They reused the city already twice at the beginning of the game, um, which is actually, yeah, Thief 2 has, in my opinion, some of the most memorable missions in the original series, but also I think it has the worst missions in the series. From talking Thief 1 to 3.
Yeah,
In
I
in
agree.
the masses, I think every game can have its one or two, but Thief 2, besides the highlights, is pretty mediocre sometimes.
Yeah, I think overall, I'm trying to think. I think some of the lows of Thief 1 are pretty low, but I think definitely I think it has the highest highs of the series. I don't think any missions in Deadly Shadows can top Life of the Party or Blackmail or First City Bank or Shipping and Receiving. Those missions are just classics. But yeah, there is some I would just say meh missions. I feel like the bad missions in Thief 1 are they experimented and tried something different and it just is doesn't quite click. But the missions in Thief 2 that are bad are just I think it's a different kind of bad. It's experimental, tried something new bad versus bleh, bland, tasteless kind of bad, if that makes any sense.
Yep, I totally agree. And since the architecture in Thief 2 was a bit more normal and not as artistic and crazy. The variety, of course, I think many people criticize Thief 2 for that. I actually like it, but still, the variety in general is not given so much. And then reusing a brown building is, yeah, I don't think the best idea. But they didn't have the time, they didn't have the money, and you can excuse everything with that.
We
I
we
would
need
have
we need
loved
a
to
we need
have
that on a clip. We need that a clip just to play
the
the time
soundboard.
money thing. Yeah, just
The
cue
IAL
it up,
soundboard.
just play it, no time, no money. I mean, it's funny because when we talk about the first and the third games, that's not quite as true, but definitely with the third game, it's really true.
We, and
Or
we
second
would
game,
make
I mean.
we would make Seth very happy because it was not too long ago where you interrupted me with your stupid soundboard idea and then you played it and I was irritated by
You
that
were
and
enraged.
I was really angry at that moment, and then I tried to keep it professional. Of course, it didn't work because Esamir on Reddit called me. No, was it Ekmir? Sorry. Someone on Reddit called me after the last episode, an angry old bastard or something like that,
I
because
just
I didn't like the mission, Lost City stuff. Yeah,
Such is life.
yeah. I'm not an angry grumpy. I'm grumpy old bastard. Yeah, I think that was it. Um, No, but yeah, Seth, you want to go on with what was it? What comment you wanted to react to?
Matej Probelski, if that
Okay.
is correct. So I'm gonna read this aloud. So firstly, a compliment to Alex's shirt.
Uh,
The best, yes.
thanks.
One more on the tally. Um, Mate says the best I can say about casing the joint / masks is it's the most tolerable for me from the last 4 missions bullshit fest of the Metal Age, especially since the map itself is quite fine. I think that's a really interesting take in that I don't think it's the most tolerable from the last 4 missions. I think Kidnapped is superior, and I think Sabotage at Soulforge is superior. I think Masks is fine.
Ooh. Okay.
I think that Kidnap is I don't know. I know that you have very specific opinions about the Lost City that I don't share. So I found Kidnap to at least be interesting from a story level of yes, the Lost City's been exhumed, and theoretically, even if the mechanists disappear, there will be a higher awareness of it going forward. So that has interesting implications for the world of Thief. Um, Casing feels like filler. I think we all mostly agree. To a greater or lesser degree, we agree. Masks is fine. It feels like a solid FM, maybe not the best FM by any means. But I like, and I'm gonna say most of my opinions about it, Sabotage at Soulforge much better than I like either of Masks or Casing. So I just find that a hard statement to agree with.
I think the problem is you can ask like 3 people and get 4 opinions on what is the least worst mission at the end of Thief, for different reasons. You know my grumpy opinion on Kidnap, but and I think I would have agreed a while ago, but since my last replay on Expert of the last mission, I kind of liked it somehow. I think because thanks to the podcast, so I had to force myself through missions on contests and stuff I normally wouldn't play. So I'm a bit tougher now. So I did it and felt more comfortable with that. So I would agree, Seth, that it's the final mission is better. On the other, I can see it's it's even more boring in its visuals and stuff, and has some it feels like they just dropped metal beasts all over the place to stretch it a bit. And I think every of those missions has some big flaws, and I think you can just like what is in your opinion the least flawed mission? That's how I see it. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's like kind of a case almost like what I was talking about earlier, where like when we're talking about like the Thief 1 lows versus the Thief 2 lows, it's almost like Sabotage like does try to do something different, especially compared to, not to get all into Sabotage because we'll get there, but like Sabotage is more experimental and is trying to be a big grand finale and being a big climax of the game, whereas like Masks, and I think this was mentioned in a comment earlier, but like Masks is like another kind of mansion robbery, or like we were saying at the beginning of the show, like we did kidnap, right? So we're going back to the lost city, and it's kind of you're underground in the ruins, and we're doing all these missions, kind of we're doing precious cargo, so we're in a new area, we're at Markham's Isle, and then we finally come back to like what would be like the bread and butter of Thief, ideal, or at times, which is mansions, estates, lords, and stuff like that. So I think it's cool. Like I like that the last mission before the finale is a mansion rob, like a mansion heist type mission, because I think that's very much like what a lot of people think of when they think of Thief. They think of the sword and you know what is the Baffords and stuff like that. So it's good to have one of those. But yeah, I think I would say Masks, like just kind of for the moment, I think Masks is probably my favorite of the last 4, but Soulforge is trying to be a climax, do new things, and kind of be the finale also that the first game's finale wasn't, which was a true test of your stealth skills. So
I have the feeling now that you just mentioned it, like maybe they were like, "Oh wait, we cannot go all the way down to the end with all those dark and KV missions. So we need some, we need some of those overcorrected." Yeah, some people said like that, like Thief 2 is like, oh, we had that on the chat yesterday in the community chat, I think it was, that where Brethren and Random Teffer were involved. That they said like it's Thief 2 is a bit overcorrected according to the feedback people they got from Thief 1. So now everything is not as exciting in the variety and the architecture. And I could imagine that they were like, "Oh shit, we are going in that direction again. So we have to add some more calm, more down to earth mission here again. We've been to the lost city. We did a huge mistake. Let's correct it." And they didn't succeed so much. Yeah, there could be many reasons. If Tim Stelmark would answer me finally, then maybe we could find out stuff like that.
that'd be a good
Um,
episode.
of course it would, but he's unreachable for me. Even Daniel
Mm,
Tron couldn't help me.
unfortunate, but
I'm gonna
yeah,
keep
I mean, I
trying. You'll
think
get through.
I think we've talked about this before. I think we talked about this when we did our gold missions like way back in the day. It's been so long now. But I definitely prefer the second game, but I definitely agree with what you said earlier, Alex. Like, I think that yeah, there's some just absolutely just like forget the missions, the bad missions in Thief 1, at least like you won't forget them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like you'll remember them. But the bad missions in this game are like, oh, I forgot this was even in the game. You know what I mean? Like
And since
following the
they
courier.
since they reused levels two times, like mask encasing the joint and ambush and chasing the career, which have been one of the most mediocre missions. It's even harder to remember certain things because it's the same environment, and without any big changes. I'm already not really sure what was now in mask and what was encasing the joint. um and yeah, it's strange. But they had their reasons. I think one of the comments was from Nemfrey Folson. Thief 1 experimental, we don't know yet, versus Thief 2, here we did all we could. And I think this describes it pretty well, or at
Yeah,
least you
pretty
get the
much. Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, for sure. I think with the yeah, it's and also how far they could go with their engine and with their technology because it wasn't, in some ways based on what I've understood and read about the development, it was, with the sound propagation and the some of that things and the lighting and stuff, it was super like advanced for 98, I feel like, but then in other ways it was maybe a little bit behind the times even for like 98, which I know 98 is when the first game came out. I knew they did some engine enhancements for the second game, but um they're a little bit behind, a little bit ahead with the technology. So
Nemfrey Folson just asked on the chat, what part of City Masks as is you would like to see again in another mission? Because in my opinion, there's really little to nothing worth preserving. Both missions reek laziness, in his opinion, or their opinion. I, it's a
I
point,
can't
I
think.
would say.
I can't think of anything that I would want to see in another mission either. It's like it's kind of bland. I like the I like the number of secret passageways and that like I like the idea of using the secret passageways as a mechanic, but they're not really that useful since they mostly are placed behind rooms that guards never enter into. So like you can circumvent the main halls and avoid long patrol routes, but there's little reason to actually duck into the passageway to escape a guard in most cases. So like I don't know. I would like to see secret passages used better. And I always like museum missions where there's like an explanation of the artifacts. I think that
yep.
leaves a lot of room for thief lore. So
Wait,
those would be my two.
just where you mentioned it, I think the way his secret passages are made, you said that very early already on the episode, but he has like, it seems like they go from very not very important places or guest rooms and stuff, where it's like, as you said at the beginning, like, wouldn't it make more sense to connect important rooms together, like between the bedrooms, or I think it's his office and the bedroom. There's a secret passage where you can just click the wall, I think it was. um, but this is like, okay, why would he need that? But there's no really important thing like where he could sneak easily from the library to his apartment rooms and stuff. I think it's really strange, or
One
not
thing,
thought out. It doesn't make sense to me.
yeah, it's a little bit half baked, but one of the things I like about this mission is I really liked climbing the beams on the third floor. It's like I was mentioning earlier, like Mission Impossibling down to get the mask. I thought that was cool because that was something where like I didn't have to do it that way. Again, strength of Thief, right? Like doing emergent things, immersive sim type emergent gameplay. Like that was cool. And I liked walking across those beams in general because I felt really like sneaky walking above like the uh, the the mechanical creatures and the guards. Like I'm like, oh, I'm above them, and I'm walking slowly, tiptoeing on this beam. Like I thought that was cool. I mean, that's not. I mean, that's something. Verticality. This mission has good verticality for an indoor mission at times. I liked climbing above like what do you call it? The displays in like the main room, like the ballroom or whatever you want to call it. Like that's another part where you can climb the beam and then lower yourself down. And so yeah, for an indoor mission, it has pretty strong verticality, which I like.
One thing that I found really impressive was, very often you can see a secret passage. Of course, in the library you can because the texture of the object is slightly different. So, uh, actually, I found the secret passage there during by just watching closely. But I was impressed that the other passageways that open into the walls, that you cannot really see them if you don't know that they're there. So they made a really awesome job with the texturing there, because in many other occasions and then fan missions as well, you can literally always see, oh, there's a secret passage. The wall looks slightly different. The texture is a bit more meh. But here they did a really great job. I don't know uh, if that's from the Thief fix, but I think it's still from the original, if I'm right.
I often
It's,
just walk around testing things with my sword to find out if they're doors.
yes, that's yeah. I use the blackjack; it's faster. Just a pro tip. No, but still think it's pretty impressive how they implemented it. That you can really, if you don't know it's there, you can't see it. In my opinion.
I had a pretty easy time seeing where some of them were. There are others that are quite hidden, like they're well blended with shadows and stuff, so it makes it a little more difficult. But there were some that I could suss out
Oh yeah, I'm Seth. I could see it, of course. Um, no, just kidding. Because I
with
was
my
actually
thief
like,
eyes.
because I think I just saw like on the gameplay when I was watching it here and there, it was like opening and closing the doors, like oh, and then just looking at it, like wow. Um, but what I found strange is that those entrances are pretty tight sometimes. Sometimes I couldn't even get through it. Did you have the same problem?
Yeah, there's a
I
couple that
did.
I got stuck in.
Yep. Yeah, they're
And
not wide enough.
there's one close to a camera, and this was really annoying because I wanted to slip through there very fast with a body, and then I couldn't get through, and then the camera saw me several times. Um, but we had another comment by Ritnar Tim. Oh, those names. Jake, do you want to read that out?
Absolutely. We are doing. Wait, I lost. Oh,
Ritnar
uh,
Tim.
Towards the
yeah,
bottom.
I found it. I think as a concept, the first time I played the game, I really liked the idea of a mission where you can't have any interactions with guards at all. Frame did it better though, and I have to map out the and you have to map out the level yourself, as I imagine is the same for most first-time players. My approach at the time was just knock everyone out. However, in practice, casing the joint is a pretty boring mission since they designed it around being more or less ghostable, while mass is more interesting. It's kind of ruined by coming right after casing. So as a result, both missions kind of suck. And also now I feel more or less, now that I more or less ghost everything anyway, casing the joint loses the uniqueness of that mechanic too. Add to the fact that both missions are clearly the most unfinished in the game, with extremely bare rooms and hallways, loot haphazardly scattered around. There's so many tiny coins in random places in these levels, and you easily have the absolute lowest point of the game, in my opinion. I will say that I like the fixing the clock objective, and that you have to listen to a conversation about it and figure out what to do with it from a fairly subtle hint.
Uh, yeah, I think he sums up a lot that we already had. I think he has a point. If you ghost anyway, then of course this is. But I think you cannot criticize the mission for that, because back in the days there was no ghosting scene like today, or like the honor among Teffers. But he has a point with all those tiny coins everywhere. That was so annoying.
Yep. Yeah.
You could see on my gameplay, like um I was running around like and checking every table, because you knew, oh, okay, at least one table in every room has coins on it.
Yeah.
It was
Just click, 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 click on every table, and they're so
and
small to see and hard to see too. You're just clicking
yeah, on
around
those
for coins.
dark brown, and thanks to the texture they appear brown as well. But I think this also indicates that maybe it was like, oh, we need loot on this mission. Can someone please drop like 40 coins throughout the mission? And um, that maybe I could imagine that it was even the case.
Yeah, it's pretty
Or
lame. And also, it doesn't make sense from a story standpoint because you're like, all right, we're gonna get the house ready for the exhibition coming up, and everybody make sure to leave your change everywhere across the table. Like,
Yeah, for a collector, Gervasius seems pretty opposed to a purse.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that was really annoying. But on the other hand, there haven't been many shelves and stuff, so there was not much where they could put things on. Um, it's strange. Yeah, but I think he has a point. Like the whole mission seems unfinished. But I also would say, just looking at the stream, there's this uh, unnecessary contraption with those colors. I think maybe they even had a wrong focus on it.
yeah, I think it also
Or
would have been
someone
better.
had this idea, like, and you know, but we have to put loot in it. No, I want my coloring machine. I made a
Yeah.
concept for it. Okay, you get it.
Yes, we have the colored gas. But I think also, like, I wish you could turn off all. I mean, I guess you wouldn't maybe put them all in the same room, right? You may put them in different rooms. But when you turn it off, it's off and it's gone. Like instead of having to come back, turn this one off and stuff like that. So I think if you would have had them, instead of all putting them all in this room right here, the atrium or whatever, take each of these gas machines or switches or whatever and put them in different places in maybe the whole mansion even, which would give you more of a reason to explore some of these empty rooms.
Yeah,
Or
maybe in one of the secret passages.
yeah, exactly. Where would if because it's kind of weird if you think about it. Like, okay, we have this gas that secures these rooms. Where are we gonna put them? Outside the bedroom. Like, you know what I mean? The switch is outside, literally right outside the bedroom. Like, I'm watching your footage right now, Alex, and it's just like the switch is literally like right next to the bedroom. Would you put like a switch to control the deadly gas outside of your bedroom? Probably not. So
And guarded, and it's guarded by one guy.
one
Um,
guy, yeah.
and what I also think, like, he's this rich man, he has this huge building, but the use of space in this whole building is so strange. And then he doesn't even have an attic or a basement. And then yeah, he puts it like in his most his living area. Um, and then there you would put this ugly contraption. Or on the other hand, maybe as a collector, maybe he's proud of having something like that, and he wants to see it every day. Those strange guys have a different taste, maybe. But yeah, there have been many strange decisions. And I didn't know, why couldn't you open the passageway in Masks here? And what I didn't like in Masks is all the closed doors. You had to lockpick everything. That was pretty annoying.
To make
But-
tension.
Does the building have a kitchen?
Yes, there is a kitchen. It's on the first floor.
right, yeah.
It's
But-
also the
but-
loudest freaking room in the whole place because it's
I
like
hated it. But
like
I
that
think
triggered so many guards in that room, especially.
yeah,
the
and then you
masks.
have this pool area, and I think the whole building doesn't look very livable, I would say.
No, it's like that's like somebody commenter mentioned earlier, like this one and like Truett's Mansion and Blackmail are like quintessential mansion missions. Like I put Truett's ahead of this one by a good bit because his like seems like it's a more of a realistic place. It's a little bit smaller, but it's tighter and like everything has like a purpose in that one.
Yeah.
And it's just it's more believable. You're like, okay, here's his kitchen, here's his dining room, here's the ballroom, here, even though I know it has like some goofy mechanist crap in it, but it's overall like something you can imagine somebody living in. Yeah, this mansion definitely is like, it's very boxy, like it's a big square and the hallways kind of don't quite make sense.
Yeah,
And
and there's not this typical, hey, you have the lower area for the servants and stuff, and where the kitchen, everything is
Mhm.
you don't want to see as a rich guy. And also, he's a collector, and I don't know, I have seen more art in Baffert's. He's actually close friends with Baffert's. He's actually saying how amazing the trips are Baffert plans, the hunting trips, which was nice, I think. And also, was what I liked about that is, for once, it's not like in general, I don't like this guy, and um So he was just honest, like, hey, yeah, Buffett's a good friend, and he really organizes great hunting trips, And then there was another note. It says like, oh, this time I didn't. I think there was a diary. This time I didn't hunt anything. I didn't kill anything. But hey, on the next trip it will be better or something like that. He seems very positive actually, which I kind of liked. It was a change of no, but yeah, the whole thing is like, who would want to live there?
Yeah, it
Mhm.
just is kind of, it's very, yeah, because I think about this mission, I think back on it. One of the things I think about is how just square and boxy it is, and like how like the hallways like don't quite make sense. Like why are they that long for these rooms that are so empty? Like it's very, yeah, it's definitely a cut below Ramir. Basically, I think it's I want to say it's maybe the weakest mansion mission, but it's definitely weaker than Truard's and Bafford's and Ramirez's and Constantine's, which is most of them.
Oh, Ramirez mansion is ugly as hell.
It's ugly, but I think
But
it like the
it makes
layout I think
sense.
is better. Yeah, it makes more
Yeah.
sense. Yeah,
Yep,
it is ugly.
I agree. Yeah, and then here you suddenly have this room with two trees in it. And that's what I didn't get. Like, wouldn't the mechanists at first try to get rid of all those plants? And then there's the servant running around. Oh,
Well, no,
maybe.
they
I think that is actually a picture they want to create, that a mechanist is running through nature here.
Well, I think the reason why Gervasius is they wouldn't want to get rid of the nature because the nature is a catalyst for the rust gas, right? When it makes contact with nature, it has a compounding effect. So for Gervasius to have a solarium with trees in it is actually beneficial to their plan to destroy everything.
But he doesn't know that plan, does he?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't know that plan, but it's part of Karras's plan. He's like, ah, yes, the nobles with their big gardens will make great catalysts for destroying the city if I put a servant in all their households.
Yeah, and I think they wanted to create this picture, like there's the servant among the nature garden room, whatever. I think this is maybe some kind of foreshadowing already, in their heads. I don't know, or maybe they just needed an NPC to put there.
Adrian J had a good idea. He said, I think the mission would have been profited from changing up the layout a bit more compared to First City Bank and Trust. Lots of variety. For example, very different security systems. I think that would have been cool. Like randomized camera placement, maybe robot
Mm.
placement as well. I mean, I think it would have given it some variety a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, it's
Speaking
harder,
of,
I think. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, I think it's harder with this mission though. Thinking about it, playing devil's advocate to Adrian and also myself, is that like this mission is because it is very like square like. It's I don't know, like First City. You can kind of I'll go through this room and then go through this room and take an alternate route. So there's ways to bypass some of those heavy security rooms. This one, it's like if you go down a hallway that you have to go down, and there's like 3 cameras and turrets there, it's going to be hard to. I think it'd be hard to randomize because of the way that the map is laid out. But maybe not. I'm sure there's a way you could do it.
speaking of Adrian J, Seth, you did some preparations.
I sure did. Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, so Adrian contacted me and wrote me an email with a link to his article, and the article is in the description. It's German, and he had I think I described it at the beginning of the episode already, right? Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
you are.
he made an interesting article about atmosphere, and used the examples of Hitman and Masks and Thief 2. And yeah, Jake, you were so kind to translate and get the gist of it, and yeah, it's really interesting. So, guys, translate it for yourself the whole article. But Seth, here you go.
Sounds good. The abstract that the article is making almost seems to imply that Adrian actually thinks that masks is kind of a good use case for what immersive sims are trying to be. So I will read the way that Adrian defines. Adrian's using another person's definition, but this is what they cite. Immersive sims are characterized by violent conflicts, the outsider role of the character, and spatial complexity of the environments. Spaces are designed in such a way that you often have multiple routes through them, such as ducts, doors, puzzles, etc. So first of all, like we're making the case that like an immersive sim needs to have these things in order to fit the definition. So then there's a section under a later part of the essay called, and I love this title, Ecstasies of a Hallway in the Thief 2 Level Masks, which is a fantastic translation. I would love to know like how that reads in German, but in English,
Accurate, yeah.
He read it in a very he wrote it in a very nice, beautiful German. I love the German language. And it's in more an academic view. Of course, it's an article like that, and it's written really beautiful and really hard for even Germans to understand, I would say.
that's funny. I just really love the way that translated. So in that section, I have basically taken the longer essay and condensed it. And so this is my condensed version. Adrian can correct me if any of this is incorrect. So starting with my extrapolation from this. Masks has many gameplay aspects that are concentrated on relatively few objects. So you're looking for a cultivator and masks. The second floor of the mansion can be reached in a variety of ways, including a secret staircase that players must find in the same place as casing the joint, as part of a preparatory mission. This path serves as a starting point for the second mission. The main hallway in the southeast corner of the second floor of the building has multiple routes and exits. The hallway is 3 times the height of Garrett, and the room can be walked through in a short amount of time, a few seconds. But it's much wider than the player character. If you were alone in this area, movement would be easy. However, there's a patrolling robot that walks almost the entire length of the corridor, and it's accompanied by a security guard with a bow, and together they occupy half the width of the entire corridor. The robot is there to make the hallway look smaller than it actually is in relation to the character, and the hallway is decorated with warm tones and has a quiet droning ambience, whereas the robot is loud and stomps about and has cold tones. So I think that's already an interesting comparison. The hallway is warm, the robot's cold. The hallway tells us about its owner. Materials like marble and wood, which could be stand-ins for nobility and tradition, respectively, are in abundance. So there is a narrative reason for the hall to be the size that it is, a narrative reason for the hall to look the way that it does. The robots and security guards tell us that Gervasius is rich enough to employ both and doesn't have to dispense with anything. And it's our job to circumvent these enemies to get the mass and the cultivator. And this area offers multiple routes, right? So there's a puzzle. There is the area above the vents, or no, they're not vents, but like there's the rafters, I'm going to call them, above the hallway that allow you to circumvent the guards and go directly into the rooms. Several people have already mentioned that they felt really smart because they got to use those to suspend themselves above the objectives and grab the mask and escape. And both of the enemies that are present in the area are ranged, which makes them more dangerous in a corridor setting. So the enemies justify the corridors as well as the corridors justify the enemies. And the best solution, of course, to this puzzle is to just avoid all of it altogether and use rope arrows, as some people have said. So I think it's interesting that somebody actually used this level as a case study compared to the definition of an ImSim and is making the case that Masks actually is a textbook ImSim level, perhaps more so than some other levels in Thief. And that's not really what a lot of us have said at all, right? Like most of us have complained about it and been like, this one kind of sucks. But I mean, if you take Adrian's essay and you read it, it's kind of hard not to agree with them.
But I would say, first of all, thank Adrian, and I think it's a really interesting article. So, guys, translate it and read it full. I think, but of course, he, turns a blind eye, I would say, in that case, to where the mission is in the story. And of course, I would say general gameplay in comparison what what is possible in Thief. So he just has a very academic, or I would say scientific way of looking at certain things. and I think that he's right on those perspectives. And this is just an example, I would say. On the other hand, I would wonder if those things he describes were intended actually, because it's like interpretation of art. Like maybe maybe Da Vinci just painted his favorite, his best uh, friends with benefits, you know, and that's it. And we do interpretations of the Mona Lisa, like that haven't been thought of by Da Vinci.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Very true.
and especially if we look at the mission, how rushed it seems. If I wonder if they really had this intention of like putting the metal beast there to to make the hallway look smaller, or if it's just like, okay, we need a harder enemy here for gameplay reasons.
Well, I think it could also be like when you're designing a mission, you might know the enemy assets that you have to work with and just be like, oh, well, the metrics dictate that this needs this much space to walk and I need to leave space for the player. So it could actually be that the hallway is adjusted to accommodate the enemy, not vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Adrian just said the reason for my choice basically because there's a lot of gameplay with the marble tiles, usage of wooden beams, light, shadow. So yeah, so I can see that the mission, since it's pretty basic, from what you need to do, like it's just a mansion. It has the usual enemies like sound, and light, and then the story of telling you via the level that he's rich, and stuff like that. So I think it's a very interesting take on it, and I would agree from just that point of view, but it just works when you don't think of maybe the circumstances of development and where the missions are put in the game and how bland they are sometimes. That's my opinion on that. But I don't know, Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I think in general, like as I'm thinking of this mission too, and I didn't have a chance to translate the full article yet, but I was reading a little bit of it earlier, and of course, I know sometimes things are lost in translation, but I thought it was really, really good, really, really well written. Like at least like from translating it from German to English, but
You,
um
you know what I said to him? When I said I will translate it, Seth did now. I was like, it's a real shame to put this really great written German text into this farmer's language now.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even just like what language, it's like when you translate things through software, right? Especially like things are going to get lost in translation through software cuz like the software is going to be like, "Oh, you meant this." And then like it might get you close, but and I'm sure you know this too cuz
Yeah,
you speak multiple languages. Like sometimes like a direct translation, a literal translation of something is not the best way to put it. Sometimes you have to take it and kind of rephrase it to get
I,
the exact meaning.
I just had that yesterday when I watched that German stream, and he plays on German, which is
Mhm.
always a brain tough for me. And then it says, in English it says "save successfully." I think it was,
Mhm.
and they directly translated it into it's called Speicherung erfolgreich. No one would speak like that. No one would say that. But I read it and it was like, okay. And then I said hilarious, successfully. Yeah, because nobody would speak like that. But um,
Exactly.
sorry, Jake, you wanted to go on.
Oh no, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, I think I really like, I really like this mission. I think overall, actually, like, I mean, kind of tie into the article and kind of what he says. Like, I think overall, I enjoy Mass. I'm probably in the camp that's higher on it. Although, like I said, kind of said a couple times, I don't think it's the strongest mansion heist mission. But I see some of his points in the article, and I don't know. Like, I see certain screenshots of the mission, like the one he has in the article, and I'm like, yeah, this is like I don't know. It brings me positive feelings when I see like some of the pictures that he shows. Whereas like if I see a picture of like trailing the courier or tracing the courier or whatever it's called, I'm like no, I'm
You
not.
know what? You know, it might have been a great way to work this into the story and not make it bad. I think if this had been the second mission in the game right after the Basso tutorial, if you stripped out all the bad security and casing and just had a mission where Garrett steals a bunch of valuable masks he hears about, later on in the plot, you could have very easily just had Victoria been like, "We need one of these masks," and Garrett could just say, "I know where to get one," and then that's it.
I'm so lucky they got Stephen Russell and not you. Um, I know how to get one. Just- um, uh, I'm just
So
kidding.
we need to
You
redo.
you actually do great impressions of many characters of the
We need
game.
to redo the
Thank you.
game with and give Garrett the silliest voice possible.
It's all just me. It's all just me. I'll do
No,
every
like
character in the game.
just give him the most ridiculous voice that you can think of, Seth, and just completely, but just do
Carrots?
all the lines. Yeah, just do
Carrots?
Garrett's voice, all the lines.
These
Um,
two, the Sethel age.
Yeah, Fables of the Penitent Thief, with all those textures and stuff. Um, no, but the idea is cool when that would actually make real sense. Like no, it's the second mission, and you already forgot about it, but you had a positive memory of it because it's the second mission, pretty basic, beautiful, and it shows a lot. Could be a good introduction to the new world, and then Garrett is like, "Oh, I know where to find one," and then you go back here right before the final mission, which is that would be a good thing. On the other hand, I think that two mentions right after another is maybe too much. I think the decision with the dogs as the second mission was a great one because the dogs were a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite shipping and receiving is one of my favorite missions in the game, I would say because it's that playground. But I agree with you that, or maybe they should have made the tutorial inside this one and then totally overlooked running interference.
I
Oh
think
no, that with Basso and
you want a
Guinevere.
smaller mission for the tutorial. So I think you want to keep running interference where it is, and I agree with what you said, Alex. I think you want to keep. I don't think you want two mansion heists back to back. I think you want to keep shipping where it is. I think
Would be the same what we were just discussing the whole episode.
Yeah. I mean, it's tricky, where you put it, right? I mean, it's a tricky thing. If I think you could put it earlier in the game, but you don't. I don't think you want to. I don't think you want to make it the tutorial because I think it'd be too overwhelming, and that definitely would be a filter for people that hypothetically you didn't play.
It would
I
be
think maybe
Beffert's Manor again, and that wasn't the best choice back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's you have such a big mission. It's great, but it's good for replays, but not for first time players. I think you put it after ambush or after eavesdropping, honestly. I think after ambush would be better. And I think somebody else said this in a comment either on the stream or I think on the stream. I think you put it after ambush because you just had a city mission. And you just had a mission where you were off of your game, because you're running away from guards. I think at that point coming to a mansion would be pretty good, especially since you haven't had one since running interference. So, and then just eavesdropping is a smaller mission anyway. So eavesdropping isn't that huge. So I think putting it after ambush, you get a big mansion mission right after ambush. Eavesdropping is a little bit smaller, so it's a nice palette cleanser before First City Bank and blackmail. So
I could also see, since they didn't finish some of the mission, maybe the eavesdropping thing could have happened here. On the other hand, I think eavesdropping was a good thing of showing the transition from Hammerites to Mechanists. So
Yep.
there's a lot of things that, there are some benefits. And then also there are some things that wouldn't work out, or where other missions would have a strong point. But yeah, I think it should be among the first 5 or 6 missions in our scenario we just described, the Sethel Age.
I think it'd be interesting to have I've thought about this before, and as we're talking about it, my mind is thinking about it more. But having having a Thief 2 remixed, where maybe you do move this mission back earlier in the game, and maybe you change some other missions, perhaps maybe not eliminate them, but I mean I don't fully completely understand exactly all the stuff that you can do with the files and with Drawmed, but like I wonder if there'd be a way to mod the game where you could maybe alter some missions and kind of, maybe it'd be sacrilegious, but make almost like a Thief 2 fan director's cut. You know what I mean?
I would still go for my idea of playing as a servant in the second visit. So that maybe Garrett after, I don't know, maybe after Life of the Party, maybe he goes here. And then he maybe he grabs like the stuff to so he can disguise as a servant, and maybe he needs something from Cavador to make it work, or I don't know. Um and then like 2 or 3 missions in between, and then you come back because someone needed to create something for you, I don't know. And then yeah. But I think in general we can say people don't actually mind that you go here a second time, but they mostly criticized that it's back to back. I think that's what I got from all the comments.
Same.
Ekmir said the college mission would have taken place before Framed in the hypothetical. The thief, well, not the hypothetical. What means hypothetical now, but the real Thief 2 gold they were working on, which that's interesting.
Yeah, I think as you said, a remix would have been great, and I wish Thief 2 Gold maybe they would have changed it as well here. I don't know, but yeah, but I think in general, we got the gist of it.
Yeah.
And but is there anything else we want to cover? Like, Seth, you mentioned that one conversation between Benny and another guard.
Yeah, so in this mission, there is an unused conversation between Benny and Benny's friend from Bafford's Manor, where the friend is actually upset with Benny and says like,
Ooh, what a surprise!
yeah, he's like, every mission I ever do with you, someone breaks in and then we get fired. And then he lists every mission they've previously had a conversation in. So it's like a fond farewell for those characters. And I didn't actually realize it's not in the base game because it's been a long time since I've played this, but I played the New Dark version that restored it, and I just wanted to bring that up because it's actually very funny that all those lines are recorded and unused.
I think it's the T-Fix version, or?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm not using T-Fix. I'm using New Dark, so I think it's
Oh,
I think
okay.
it's just a New Dark restoration. I'm not a T-Fixer.
Really? It's too modern, and yeah. You would like every time someone releases a mission now on the forums or on thiefguild.com, Seth is always like, sorry guys, is there an old dark version maybe for this?
Yeah, I'm always living in the past. I want my software renderer back.
Sorry, can you translate this into Dark Camelot? Maybe is there a way to do that? Yeah, but back to the conversation. I think that's actually a really nice thing, because it's those character. Of course, Benny and the other guy, they get stuck to your heart a bit, and it's the Daniel Tron guy, right?
Yep.
And yeah, so Benny and the angry one. Yeah, it's as you said, it's a nice farewell and a really cool. It really sums it up and it shows and makes this world so much more believable and livable. And that we discussed that already. Like it's a dark game, but those goofy characters actually make it worth it, And yeah, nice thing.
Gives them their own
Agreed.
special arc.
So anything else? And you had a lot of comments, notes, Seth, but
I think we covered pretty much everything that I wanted to over the course of the thing. Though I just wanted to say I really like the ambience. Like I could listen to it all day. And thanks to a metal I can.
Origin G Melomjord. I think it's Swedish or something. This game is 20 years plus and it's still being talked about. Why is that we still gush about That's so many years later because it's amazing. What else can we say?
It's a landmark game.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Plus, like, people are still keeping it alive with fan missions, so
Oh yeah.
it makes it easy to go back and compare over and
It was just yesterday when I was on that German stream. Shout out to Garrett TMT. Where the people were like asking, "Hey, anything new on the Black Parade and stuff?" And I was just like, they were like, "Oh yeah, it takes a while," and I was like, "Yeah, but isn't it amazing that we are still waiting for like 2 campaigns in the future, like a Black Parade and the Broken Goddess, like 25 years after the release?" And it's amazing, and and that's why we do this. Oh, it's Norwegian, sorry. Um, yeah. So I would say thank you very much to the guys in the chat that have been joining us. Also, of course, all the really great comments. This time the quality was really good. And it's mostly, but this time I think it was really well written, everything, and with all the different views. And I think like missions that it's like mixed opinions on it are always very interesting, even if the mission itself is not so interesting, maybe. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Jake and Seth, of course. And next up, Soulforge. Woohoo!
for some sabotage.
Yeah, guys, you can already prepare your opinions, I would say. I will ask you in a couple of weeks to send them in. So yeah, thank you very much and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Take care.
I could really learn to hate these guys.